Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
And I'm Valerie Comer. And the purring sound you hear is Cooney.
Today, the three, possibly four of us, if she sticks around, are going to be chatting about the CCR we've been reading lately, just for fun. And I can't wait to hear what Cooney's been reading. So I am looking forward to hearing what you guys have been reading, and I hope that everyone else is too. I always get more suggestions for my book stack listening to these episodes. So
for sure,
to me, that's the fun part. So we're going to just jump in. Narelle, do you want to go first?
I will go first. So the one that I've chosen to go with first is Falling for the Foe by Milla Holt. Mm-hmm. And this is the first book in her Colorblind Love series. And it was such a great book. It was so much fun to read. So it's actually set in Uganda, and I love international settings in CCR. So I'm more than happy to go to Africa anytime, any place, anywhere. So the heroine is Naima. I'm probably saying this wrong. My apologies.
N-Y-A, I think. Naima.
N-I-A.
N-I-A. It's been a while since I read it, but I have quite a few mememories of the book. I really enjoyed it.
Yes.
I would say Mia if it's N-I-A myself personally, but I mean, maybe Milla can come tell us how that's supposed to be pronounced.
Yes, well, Nia is a HIV/AIDS activist. So her background is that she was with her grandmother. She lost both her parents to HIV, and she has a real heart for her people in Uganda to have access to medicines and treatments, because in the Western world, we know that HIV, which back in the 80s was a death sentence for a lot of people, is now very treatable with all the pharmaceutical meds that are available. So there's been a company that's done a clinical trial in Uganda of a new drug that's coming out. And so she is very outspoken. She's not a shy girl, Naya, at all.
No, she's not.
Very outspoken. And so she puts a blog post up talking about how it's not fair that people in countries like Uganda, who are earning $1 a day, is basically their wages, and living a very subsistence life, can't get access to these expensive drugs when they get put to market, because they're just way too unaffordable, and the countries can't afford to subsidize it like other countries in the world can. So she puts up this post and then ends up picking up a job with, I think it's a government job, or it's a job with a health department or a hospital system that's connected to the state. And she picks up a job there looking at promoting the services they do for helping people with HIV. And in the meantime, we have the hero. His name is Magnus, and he's British, but I think he's from Scandinavia, Norway, potentially his family's from. Yeah. Anyway, so he is the son of a possibly billionaire, very wealthy father. And he's set up this company. So he's a multimillionaire himself. He's not short of money by any means. Set up this company, and they've done this development into this HIV treatment, and they're basically about to bring it to market. So his company has sank an enormous amount of money into doing all the research and development. And so they now need to get it listed. The share price goes up, and then they basically cover their costs and make a profit on the drug. So he's about to make the big announcement. And of course, this blog post goes viral, and it's like the New York Times or the Guardian, all those types of newspapers pick up Nia's little blog post and run it. And this is a scandal that's going to ruin this drug launch, because they need the good price. Otherwise, it's going to be a very bad thing on their balance sheet if they don't get the share price up. So he and his sister, they get the bright idea that they're going to go to Uganda to try and put some damage control in place and work out how they can spin all this situation to not send their company into bankruptcy from not making their money back on the drug. And he ends up working with Naya on this project, and it's enemies to love, so they really do not like each other.
and it's not just a personal dislike, it's their whole
their
whole life system.
Yes. and she's even more offended that he doesn't remember her. So because she went to college in the UK on a scholarship and worked really, really hard to get qualified in where she is. And he was in one of her classes, I think, was there for a couple of months, and was really the pampered rich boy who'd never bothered to do any work in the group assignments and just cruised and then disappeared. So she has a very preconceived idea about who he is and what he's like and how he thinks and all that kind of thing. And it's a fish out of water. Magnus in Uganda is very much a fish out of water. And I loved how they ended up in the countryside. So you actually got to see the real life of the people in Uganda and going to the well to get water and all that kind of thing in the story as well. And I really liked the way it ended as well. I thought Milla did a really good job with this one. And there's just so many things to love about this book. And this series, I think, is going to be really good. This is the first one I've read, so I'm looking forward to reading more.
Excellent.
If you notice, the motor is gone. The cat just jumped off.
Yeah.
Oh, abandon us.
It'll be quieter now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear her, so it's okay.
The first book that I read that I wanted to talk about today is called Accepting Elijah's Heart by Naima Joseph. Raina is recently widowed. She has a baby boy. She lives in New York City. And while unloading her taxi after grocery shopping, and her baby's asleep in the car seat, and she's taken the groceries out, she turns around to see the taxi driver speeding off with her baby still in the back seat.
Oh.
And then it's his last call of the day, so he's turned off his radio. She doesn't know who he is. It's a private thing. A neighbor in her apartment building called Eli, he calls the police. He stays with her until the independent cabbie, who finally arrives at home and notices that he has
a baby
in his back seat, and he calls the police himself. So meanwhile, social services has jumped in because she's obviously not a careful mother and she doesn't deserve this baby. So it's basically a racial injustice kind of story, because Raina is Black. And so, and this very white social worker is really trying to make an example out of her. Eli is white as well. So as far as that all goes, and he's fighting for her and trying to help her navigate the system and stuff. But it kicks off this interracial romance in which there's a lot of themes of the systemic racism that can happen in places. And the Christian themes in it are super strong. Both of them are really struggling in their faith, but they have faith journeys in both cases that where they're really learning to depend on God. Now, this is a book that takes place over a longer than average time period for CCR. And you can kind of see right from the beginning that it's going to need that, because she is still really grieving for her husband. So there needs to be some space for that to come full circle, I guess. It's the first book that I have read by Naima Joseph, who is, I believe, if I remember right, Haitian, of Haitian descent. And I definitely would not be opposed to picking up more books by Naima.
I would love to see CPS actually operate that quickly in
real life.
In real life, yeah.
Yeah, and she's called in by the police and yeah.
I
mean, we can, as authors, we kind of fudge and slide things through a little bit to make the story happen.
Yeah, if she made, if this is a CPS worker with a chip on her shoulder about making an example of someone, then I can see, how you could set it up. But I don't think that the majority of CPS workers operate that way necessarily.
Oh, I don't think so either. And and I don't think that even in the story, she's pretending that.
Okay.
This woman is not typical of her kind. but she's the one that was assigned to the case, and,
Sure.
and so they're all having to try and work around her, through her, at her,
Right.
because she holds the clout
She has-
in this situation.
Sure. Cool. All right. I have been reading through the Stryker Security Force series by Sara Blackard, which is sort of romantic suspense, although I would say it's not so super suspensey that, it's much more romance with some suspense as opposed
Gotcha.
to suspense with a little bit of romance. So I'm calling it counting.
Works.
There are, I think there are 8 of them. I bought the box set.
Okay.
And I've been working through the box set. And so far, what I've really enjoyed is the fact that when I saw them, they were marketed sort of more as sweet or clean romantic suspense. They have a very visible, strong faith arc. They're very definitely Christian. Very definitely. And it was a pleasant surprise. I'm like, oh, hey, these are actually, they're very fun and very good. You do probably need to read them in order. Sometimes with romantic suspense series, you can pick around, but this one, there was this mission that they were all on in the first book that went sideways and was horrible. And there are echoes of that through all of the books. So if you haven't read that one, you're going to feel lost if you haven't. And I would say I've picked a couple favorites. So my first favorite I'll talk about, and then I'll talk when we go around again, I'll talk about my second favorite. But Crashing into Jake is book 4 of the series. And Jake lost his leg as part of that initial mission gone sideways. And as a result of having been shot to where he lost his leg, someone else died. And so he's carrying all of this guilt that if he hadn't been more careful and so forth, if he had been more careful, not hadn't, if he,
I heard what you meant.
okay.
Yeah.
And so, so he's helping a up and coming country music star escape a stalker, and their plane goes down. So they're sort of stranded in this cabin because of a snowstorm. And it's just interesting seeing she has celiac disease. And so none of their emergency rations are gluten-free, surprisingly. So, but he has this leg that's been amputated. So he has a false leg, but it's not something he can go hiking through snowdrifts with. And so it's interesting to see, again, them deal with their various feelings of inadequacy as they work towards their relationship with one another. And sort of this idea that, this overarching idea that, it's not up to me to save this other person, just like we don't say, it's so clearly drawn in there, we don't save ourselves, God saves us. And when you feel like you're the one who has to do the saving, that often can get in the way of your spiritual growth, because you can apply that in all sorts of your aspects of your life. And you become this person who feels that they've got to earn their way into salvation, as opposed to recognizing that this is a gift we're given. So really good, enjoying it a lot.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, Valerie, what's your next one?
My next one is called The Billionaire's Secret by Meghann Whistler. So there's a resort in Vermont. Big shock, I'm sure. It opens up for people with disabilities and terminal illnesses and so forth, so that they can get a break from their regular life, which in this case is not that great. People are, suffering from assorted things. So we open up with Ryan, the hero. He has 2 friends, and they are his partners in this business that has vaulted them to billionaire status. And they pretty much force him to go to this resort in Vermont. He has been grappling for a few weeks with a diagnosis of an incurable autoimmune disorder. And he doesn't want to step out even temporarily, but I mean, he's falling asleep in board meetings. He's missing some of the cues he needs. And his friends are like, you need a break. And he's like, but, and they're like, no, everything will be fine. We've got it covered while you're away. We're not pushing you out. You need a break. So finally, very reluctantly, he agrees to go. And while he's there, he meets Sara, who's there accompanying her terminally ill mother. So her mom, of course, being one of those who just wants to live long enough to see her daughter happy. It's not exactly a fake relationship thing, but there's some kind of hints of that in there. And she has no idea that Ryan has a pile of money. And Ryan doesn't really want to tell her that he's got these health problems. He doesn't want to saddle any woman with that. He can't, he shouldn't. But so through it, they somehow managed to forge a friendship that quickly leads to more when Sara's mother needs sudden intervention, and Ryan has the capability to make that happen like instantaneously. And she's very shocked and all that good stuff. But then, of course, she's not really impressed to find out that he's rich and that he's been hiding that from her. And he was just trying to be, one of the normal people. There was really a lot to like in this book. You may know that I wouldn't go out of my way necessarily to pick up a billionaire romance, although I'm finding that that's less and less true, really, honestly, in the last year or so. This one was really well written, and it ticked a lot of the feel good and done right boxes for me. I really enjoyed the story.
It's on my TBR list, that one. Yeah.
I just read that one. It didn't make my list because I literally read it the day before yesterday. So, but
what did you think of it?
I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I agree. It's Billionaire done right. It addresses, and I like the fact, that he's working and he's grappling with these things, and he has to sort of acknowledge his own insufficiency, I guess. Right. The money doesn't fix everything, and that's right. I like that aspect of Billionaire novels, is for you to realize that money sometimes causes more problems than it solves, depending. It can't fix everything. No, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to the next. I think it's the first in a new series, if I recall.
I believe so, yes.
Her. So I'm hoping the next one is Sara's brother. I'm assuming that's sort of, although it could be one of the other venture capitalists. So there's a lot of
one of the other guys, but
it might be. Yeah. There's a lot of room. She has a lot of people who I want to read stories about. So she set it up. She set up a series nicely.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
All
right, Narelle, what's yours?
Well, my next one is Hoping for Hawthorne by Tara Grace Ericson, which is the first book, although I think it's book 0, in the Bloom Sister series, because obviously Hawthorne is not a girl. It is a boy's name. Yes. And a football team name in Melbourne. That's what I keep thinking of. Would you believe an AFL team name?
I was going to say, I don't know that it's not a girl's name. To me, it's not a boy's name either.
Yeah.
It's a tree name. Yeah. It's not a person's name at all.
Anyway, I digress. Yes. So I like to start in book 1 when I read a series. And so I thought, well, I need to go back to the beginning and read the first book, because both of you have talked about Tara's books glowingly. And I thought, so I need to find out what this is all about. So Hawthorne he's sort of aimless. Like, he's got 6 sisters who are kind of have their lives together, and he had previously had a company that had gone bankrupt or into liquidation, and he's living at home with his parents on the farm, kind of just rolling along, sort of not aimlessly sort of traveling along. And Avery, who is the heroine, she's a chemical engineer and is going to be working at the university in town. So she's very smart, very intelligent, and very forthright. And I just love the meet cute in this book. They're in this bar, and he's with his drinking buddy friends from college that he really knows that they're not a good crowd for him to be around, but he's kind of just aimlessly cruising along, and whatever, just says he'll hang out with them. And there's a waitress who one of his buddies is quite obnoxious to, and Avery calls them out on the behavior. I really like Avery. And then
Yeah,
she
was good in that.
yes. And then she calls Hawthorne by name, and he's like, who is this woman who knows me? This is awful. And fast forward a little bit in time, because Avery's back in town where she did grow up, and she was friends with, I think it's Daisy and Lily, maybe. No, I can't remember. She was Poppy.
Some of his sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many sisters. Yeah. So she was friends with his younger sisters, and he was older. So I think when she was like high school age, he was at college age. And so her mum, his mum, I should say, invites Avery to come to the Saturday morning brunch that the family has every week. This is a big deal in the Boyne family, their Saturday brunch. And then he works out who she is, and it's like, oh, this is not good. So the foundation for enemies to love is there, and she'd had a massive crush on him years ago. And and what I think I really liked about this book is that she just wasn't prepared to settle. Like she liked him, she was attracted to him, but he had to get his act together and start behaving himself and start really thinking about his faith and about stuff for her to actually engage with him on a relationship level. And I think that was a really positive message that sort of went through the book, that she wasn't just going to settle for him hanging out with these guys who are really quite a bad influence on him as well. So I really like the faith message and the faith journey in this book as well. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading more.
I liked how that book landed up, but I didn't really, I struggled a lot with Hawthorne in the first few chapters. I just really wanted to do some damage. Okay, spank him. I wanted him to just like not be so stupid. And I know as an author, it's a hard line to draw. You want to give your characters room to grow, and they can't all be like just now becoming like this wonderful person that everybody wants to hang out with. But yeah, I mean, I think Tara did a great job of pulling him through that, out of that. But I did struggle with the beginning of that story.
He was tough at the beginning because he was so like little aimless boy. Obnoxious. And it's like, dude, you're not a teenager anymore. This isn't cute. You gotta, I mean, and that's kind of the whole point of the story, right? It's time to grow up now. And she did do a very good job getting him there. But I agree that Avery pulls you through the beginning of the story where you're like wanting to throttle.
Whereas I didn't have that, interestingly. Okay. And I think this again goes back to maybe my background and being an Aussie. And I will be talking in episodes about how that sort of bar culture is not probably as foreign to me maybe as other people, but I saw him as quite typical. To me, that wasn't surprising. That he was hanging out with these people because he didn't have a reason not to. So I thought that was very realistic, but I could see why some readers could struggle with that being too real, if that makes sense. Yeah. Whereas I was there.
I would say it's still very realistic for American kids of that age. It certainly, maybe not as much maybe in like the church crowds, but even still some. But you know, I think because at least for me, it's like, I know this is Christian fiction, so he can't stay this way.
Yeah.
And he knows better. He was raised better. That part was probably part of it too, is it's like you can tell that he was raised better.
I just want to say to our podcast listeners that if you start this book and you go, I hate this guy, I'm going to put this book down, give him a bit of time.
Yeah, hang in there.
It's worth it. It's worth it to hang in there. And if you like the whole story from the beginning,
That's good. That's good
You
too.
go. It's a great series.
Yes.
I think the whole series is complete now.
Yep.
And you'll enjoy it. But yeah, give them a chance.
Excellent. So my second one is another Stryker security force. This one is Discovering Rafe. I think it's Rafe, R-A-F-E. That's, I would say Rafe.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. All right.
Or it could be Rafe is the other way of saying
See,
it.
that's what I'm like. It could be Rafe. That sounds really strange to my ears. It doesn't have the little slash over the E though. So maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I called him Rafe in my head.
Okay.
So that's what you're getting is Rafe. And what's fun with this one, it's book 5, and books 4 and 5 of the series, actually their timeline is overlapping. So you read book 4 first and you get this perspective on it. And then you read book 5, which has sort of a different, like it takes a turn. So you get some of book 4 the same, just from different perspectives. And then it takes a little turn. So while Jake is stranded in this cabin, you're finding out what's going on with Piper and Rafe. And so that's kind of fun, you know, I like it. It's hard. I've written it once or twice.
Me too, once.
It's really
Oh
hard.
my.
It's really hard for the author. So I appreciated it from that standpoint too, because it's not easy. But Rafe is just, again, riddled with guilt. But he's just fabulous. And he's a brother's best friend. This is a brother's best friend. Piper's brother, Daniel or David, it starts with a D. Anyway, he and Rafe were best friends growing up, and Piper was kind of the tag along, you know, thinking how hot her brother's friend was the whole time. So she's had this unrequited crush for forever. And she's like, she was just getting to the point, like, it's time to move on. I've got to get over this. This is ridiculous. And then he's back in her life. So I like that too. I think that's a fun trope. It's just a fun trope. And it was well written and well done. So, all right. I don't have a third one. Do either of you have a third one that you just have to mention?
Me, I do.
No.
Okay, Valerie does.
The other book that I read recently that I wanted to talk about is To Bring You Back by Emily Conrad. And Adeline used to sing in the high school version of the now famous band Awestruck. She was still in high school when the guys, not the other guys, she's the only girl, when they went to LA to make it big without her, and her dad wouldn't let her go because, hello, she still had to finish high school. And there's been some stuff that's happened and you don't know what kind of stuff it is at the beginning. The band has rented an estate nearby in Wisconsin for the summer so that the lead singer, Gannon, can, you know, write some music and they can get ready for their next gigs, their releases. I think it was to make another album. Anyways, she is forced to see him, and she's had a troubled past with him, and you figure that part out really quickly. Then the town teenagers clue in that these guys who are wandering around, you know, with their caps low and skulking around are this awesome Awestruck band. And then they figure out that Adeline was once part of the group, and then there's just no peace for anybody because they're really big. And she is forced to go to the estate for her own security. So the story is full of ups and downs as these little details get revealed, and then more get revealed, and then more. And Adeline and Gannon work through the trauma they went through together and all the years previously. So, because I mean, I could spoiler alert that like 10 ways from Wednesday, but I won't. The pieces are revealed slowly, but quickly enough. And I found that it was well paced and well written. And I really liked Adeline. She was stuck in the past. And Gannon was trying to help her work through, but you didn't know why exactly or what his stake in it was. But it was well done, and I enjoyed it. Now we've got a rock star romance here, so that's also, fun. But I did really enjoy this story.
Cool.
Sounds
Excellent.
good.
Yeah. All right. So let us know what you've been reading lately. Tell us in the comments, or if you've read any of these, feel free to comment on those as well. We love to hear from you guys. We will not have an episode next week for Good Friday. Spend your day doing Good Friday things, thinking of how much Jesus gave for us. And we'll see you the week after. So thank you for joining us at Story Chats. Please do drop us a comment. We do love to hear from you. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can check out inspyromance.com/storychats to see information about the podcast. And we won't see you next week. We'll see you the week after next. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.